Hello everybody, I'm Solothalion, and welcome back to my series reviewing each of the books in the Wings of Fire series. I'm back from my busy week and I'm raring to do more videos. I have another excursion coming up in a week or so, but I'm hoping to get through book 4 before then. I'll also be working on writing the script for book 5 and the Winglets while on my trip, so hopefully those don't take as long to release. Speaking of which, the way that I want to review Winglets in the Legends book will be Winglets after the first arc, Darkstalker after the second, and Dragonslayer after the third. I think it will allow me to reflect on each arc as a whole, and review the book's connections to their respective arcs with a fuller picture. One more important thing to mention before we get into the video. Starting with this book, I will be doing a reread of the book I am talking about before making each video. I mentioned in the intro video that I would review the actual book of The Lost Heir in this series, since in my initial reread, I had to read the graphic novel. I think that reading that book so close to the video really helped me put my thoughts on the book together in a more cohesive way, since I remember the story so much better. I know it hasn't been that long, about a month or two since I did my initial reread, but I really want to make sure I don't miss any important details, and I think that this will be the way to make sure that happens. Without further ado, let's get into it. This video will be covering Book 3, The Hidden Jungle, which is told from the perspective of Glory, a Rainwing who found herself replacing the lost Skywing of the Dragonet prophecy. Oh boy, this is where the fun begins. I mentioned this in the previous video, but to me, books 3 through 5 in the first arc all feel closely related. Unlike books 1 and 2, the stories told in these 3 books are continuous, and the story doesn't feel concluded until the arc itself concludes in book 5. They feel like a mini-series in and of themselves in that way. Also, in a way, Book 3 kind of serves as a setup book, similar to Book 1, but I'll talk about that more a bit later. Let's start with Glory. Glory, as I mentioned in previous videos, is probably my favorite character from the first arc. She's witty, sarcastic, and has a complicated character arc that really starts to get explored in this book. Getting to see her perspective in this book really opens her up for growth. This book primarily takes place in the rainforest, but due to the Animus tunnels, the characters end up traveling all across Pyria. As a result, you might think that the book's plot might be all over the place and kinda scattered like Book 1's was, but it actually isn't. The Hidden Kingdom maintains a through line throughout the entire story, which makes even going to the Ice Kingdom feel necessary and connected to the main story. The Dragonets are also together through the entire book, minus smaller sections, where it actually feels natural that they aren't brought along. Their inclusion in the story means that they have smaller interactions with each other as well as larger roles and points throughout the book. I cannot stress enough how far even those small interactions go towards making the book feel higher quality and more complete. The prologue of the Hidden Kingdom doesn't really tell us anything new. The Talons of Peace are still stupid, Nautilus is still incompetent, and Marosir is still spooky. I do believe that it introduces us to Fate Speaker, who is a more important character in the first arc than the other alternates because of the role that she plays in Book 4. Part 1 begins the through line by reminding the readers of why the Dragonets are in the rainforest in the first place. Webbs was stabbed by Blister at the end of The Lost Heir, and they are hoping that the Rainwings have some solution or cure. The through line is also established through a small sort of mystery element, with Mudwings dying, monkeys randomly starting to scream, as well as the rainforest monster, which foreshadows the later tunnels and Glory's capture. The main plot of the story begins when the Dragonets get to the Rainwing village, and Glory's in-book arc begins. Her arc sort of differs from books 1 and 2 as a result of how closely intertwined the final trio of books is. Her arc greatly develops in this book, but I would argue that it doesn't actually conclude until at least the end of book 4, if not all the way into 5. Either way, it begins here. The first part of this book deals a lot with how Glory views her tribe. In the first 2 books, we constantly hear about how pretty much every dragon in Pyria views Rainwings as lazy and useless, and we constantly hear the Dragonets reassure Glory that she isn't. When they get to the rainforest and start meeting them, things aren't so black and white. I like that there are some elements of her tribe that Glory actually feels proud of, such as the blowguns and the structure and design of the village. There is also the rallying of the tribe to take care of Tamarin, but we'll talk about that later. However, much of her own worldview differs heavily from her tribe, in a similar fashion to Tsunami. She views Suntime as a waste, her general attitude and view of the world is different in terms of things like queens, and her probably biggest difference, she's more than willing to use her venom on other dragons, given the need. The missing Rainwings are also established in this part. They're an important piece of setup for the final trio, and the main through line that connects the events of this book together. They are also great for Glory's arc. She herself draws parallels to her own egg being taken, and I love her line, "because someone should care when a dragon disappears." She also doesn't put herself up to the task of rescuing them to prove a point, which I love about her character. She does it because she legitimately cares about other dragons going through what she went through. Through that thick layer of sarcasm, Gloria is a deeply compassionate dragon. As a result of the missing Rainwing throughline being established, we are introduced to Mangrove, a character that I really like. He's a stark opposite to many of the other Rainwings while still being part of them, and provides Gloria with a character that she can connect to her tribe through, alongside Jambu. Jambu is a fun character, if not a little annoying at times. I think his relation to Glory creates a cool connection between the two of them, and he plays a semi-important role in part 2. Speaking of which, the second part of the book is where things get crazy, like usual. Thankfully, the throughline keeps things on track, and the book doesn't become all over the place. Mangrove zooming away to try and find Orchid is stupid, considering he has no idea where she could be, even if she was through that specific tunnel. I think his love for her is so crazy though that it kinda makes sense. When the Dragonets and Jambu go to bring him back, it brings them to the Ice Kingdom. Meeting with Blaze was already established in previous books as something the Dragonets wanted to do, so it fits well here. I also like that Jambu has a use in this section, in being able to identify Mangrove under camouflage. Another small thing I like about this section is Sunny's small wow in reaction to being in the Kingdom of the Sand for the first time. It's just a small character building thing that I appreciate. The Animus tunnels are obviously also established in this section. They're quite important to the story in the final trio, even in part 5, when establishing Sunny's backstory. Also introduced in this section is another one of my favorite characters, Deathbringer. Deathbringer is a character that we don't know a ton about, but from the little interaction we get between him and Glory, we know that Glory has finally met someone who can match her wit. He's also a bit mysterious as well. The only other Nightwings we know at this point are Starflight, Marrowseer, and Fate Speaker, I guess, so a new Nightwing is actually super interesting. Glory figuring out that he's there to kill them also creates a bit of tension, but after meeting her, he clearly didn't want to anymore. He's needed for books 3 and 4 to happen, as well. Blaze is also introduced proper here, and she is just as ditzy as we were always told that she was. She also serves as a parallel to the Rainwing Queens, and serves as a reason in Glory's mind as to why Blaze shouldn't be the queen. Sunny, without much effort, also gets Blaze to reveal that the juice inside of Cactus is what cures Sandwing Venom, which is kind of a big reveal. It also ties back into the throughline and ties up the Web's plotline for now. Once they get back to the rainforest, Deathbringer tries to figure out the best way to both keep Glory alive and maintain his appearances to his tribe. It kind of reminds me of the balance that Starflight has to maintain throughout the first arc, but rather than appearances, he tries to actually maintain loyalty to his tribe, something that he suffers from in Book 4. The actual reveal of the Night Kingdom is massive. This tribe has been so completely mysterious for 2.5 books, and the reveal of where Glory ended up and where that second tunnel leads is just really cool. It also contains the big reveal of the fact that Nightwings are the ones taking the Rainwings, and the question becomes why are they taking and experimenting on them. This section also introduces Kinkajou, another great character. Between Jambu and Kinkajou, Tui does a really good job of writing fun, bubbly characters that aren't annoying and actually have other redeeming qualities. Similar to how Mangrove and Jambu served as characters that Glory could begin to understand her tribe through, Kinkajou serves as a character that Glory is able to understand what is happening in the Night Kingdom through. Kinkajou and Glory's relationship is generally pretty wholesome too throughout the entire series. I love the escape from the Nightwing Island. It's fantastic and it's tense. Glory's differences from the rest of her tribe and the Nightwing's prejudice is what actually allows them to escape in the first place, which is a trope that has been used a few times at this point, but one that I still think really works well here. I love seeing Kinkajou standing up for herself multiple times during their escape, something that even Glory notes. I love the addition of Deathbringer and especially Clay into the escape. It's shocking how great a climactic scene can be when multiple main characters are incorporated into it. Clay gets to use his fireproof scales as the last surprise that allows them to finally get through the tunnel. I also enjoy the mention of Sunny and her weird little combat tactic, which builds on her relationship with the other dragons, as well as shows that she isn't as helpless as she seems. The final thing I enjoy from the escape sequence is Glory's moment of anger that leads into the Sunny battle tactic. Her rage towards the Nightwing that hurt Kinkajou is palpable, and shows how much she already cares for her tribe, and especially Kinkajou. When they finally escape and confront Magnificent about a rescue being needed, the challenge that leads into the third part is a great moment that always puts a smile on my face. The pacing of the Hidden Kingdom is a little weird, given that what could be considered the climax of the book, the escape of the Night Island, happens in the second part. However, considering the third book's place as a mini setup book for the final trio, I think that ending on the Rainwing competition makes sense. Small side note. As I've matured since I've read this book for the first time, I really appreciate Sunny's view of the world and of dragons more and more. After Glory mentions the challenge, her quote, "We're dragons, not caterpillars, we can do things differently if we choose to," is a really nice sentiment, and like I said, one that I appreciate. I've noted a few times now throughout this book things that I enjoy that Sunny was involved in, and I think that I've grown to enjoy her as a character more during this reread, so I'm excited to see if I enjoy Book 5 even more than I initially remember. Back to the challenge. I like it. The exclusion of the main dragonettes from it feels completely necessary, and in this specific circumstance, I actually much prefer them to be excluded. It feels like working with her tribe is necessary for Glory's growth, and she even mentions that it is necessary for her to be a good queen. The plot reason of needing to use Rainwings during the competition is also a completely understandable plot reason to exclude them. Tamarin is a cool character, and also brings back a little of the pride from Glory. The fact that her tribe rallied to take care of a bland dragonette actually gives her hope for the future of them. The only kind of meh thing about this section is the queen's cheating during the challenge. I kind of like how the other queens are all cartoon villains, but the actual cheating is a bit contrived and also just told to the readers. I wish it was at least a little more subtle in some way, or the queens were called out for it more, but overall it's a small nitpick. I like the world building that Grandeur brings to the book, showing how there was a decline in typical dragon culture among the Rainwings, brought on by the introduction of multiple queens. I think that the reveal of Glory being in the line of original Rainwing queens is cool, and her care for Kinkajou was also established once more during the challenge. Another small note, since I don't know if I'd have a place to mention it in the future books. I love how little the fact that Glory is in the royal Rainwing bloodline is brought up. She is always mentioned as a good queen in the later books, but it is always by virtue of her own actions, not by some blood relation. That's something that I can really appreciate. The book ends with Glory becoming queen and Starflight's disappearance, two massive events that tie directly into books 4 and 5. To conclude, this book is a banger, and by a decent margin the best of the books that I've reviewed so far. The overall layout is quite similar to the Dragonette Prophecy, with the story going a ton of different places and needing it to set up a ton for the books ahead of it. The Hidden Kingdom does these things much better than the Dragonette Prophecy, however. For one, the throughline of missing Rainwings and other plot points like Webb's illness ties the whole story together. The things that are set up in this book are also massive reveals, between Glory becoming Queen of the Rainwings, the Night Kingdom being revealed, and Starflight's disappearance. The presence of the other dragonettes during the story also add a lot. Their presence in both small and large scenes adds so much between how it grows their own characters as well as Glory's. Great characters are also introduced alongside the other dragonettes, some of the most enjoyable in the series. Mangrove, Deathbringer, Kinkajou, and a few of the other minor Rainwings are all characters with depth that aren't nearly as annoying as characters in the second book. As a result of this, the final tier list placing will be A tier. I have a couple of books in mind that I think really deserve the S tier placing, and I want to keep it special. This book just barely falls short of it, but it is still an excellent book and reaches high A tier easily. The next book in the series is The Dark Secret, and my thoughts on it might just be the most controversial of this review series yet. Until then, have a good one.